Hey guys, I'm just going to preface this review quickly to let you know that When the Stars Gossip is one of the worst Korean dramas I've ever seen in my entire life. I wouldn't normally do this for full season reviews, but there will be big spoilers ahead. But honestly, the show is so bad it shouldn't really matter too much. So with that little disclaimer out the way, let's get cracking. Now, an ending can make or break a project, and perhaps nowhere else is that more devastating than in the world of Korean dramas. Unlike in the West, K-dramas generally entice on big name stars with a brief synopsis of the show and complete scripts in the first few episodes, rather than a detailed outline of the entire series. Furthermore, audiences wind up with a lot more time with these characters, with each episode clocking in over an hour. After watching the full 16 episodes of When the Stars Gossip, I'm pretty confident in saying this is definitely one of the worst Korean dramas ever released. Now, I know that Korean dramas generally tend to hold a higher level of standard compared to dramas from the West, but even in Korea we have had some proper stinkers over the years. However, this space opera definitely makes a claim for hitting that unwanted accolade. Billed as one of the most expensive Korean dramas ever produced, with a budget of 50 billion won, which is about $38 million, the show had a lot to live up to ahead of release. Coupled with big name stars like Lee Min-ho and Kong Hyo-jin, the idea of a spacebound romance with wisps of comedy and a larger story around life and our future as a species definitely had promise. The execution, however, is nothing short of disastrous. The story here predominantly centers on two individuals, Commander Eve, played by Kong Hyo-jin, who has dedicated her life to being an astronaut and works for the MCC, which is the Korean Space Agency. She's a perfectionist and doesn't tolerate mistakes from anybody. She's intent on trying to push the boundaries of what's possible in space, with plans of experimenting on animals to try and see if pregnancy and insemination is possible in zero-G. These experiments include watching fruit flies have sex, no, I'm not making this up, we genuinely see this, while they goad mice to try and court one another. While Eve and the crew crack on with their experiments, they're joined by a space tourist by the name of Gong Ryong, played by Lee Min-ho. He's an obstetrician and a prospective son-in-law for the largest chaebol group in the country, MZ. The company have paid top dollar for him to hop aboard this flight out into space, but it's certainly not from the goodness of their heart. Instead, Ryong is tasked with a special secret mission here, all as a way of trying to win favour with the chairman, Jae Ryong. He smuggles eggs and sperm from the chairman's deceased son and very much alive daughter-in-law onto the space shuttle, with the mission here being to inseminate the eggs and give the chairman the grandson he always wanted. This can't be done on Earth though because of wonky sperm and other complications, but there's undoubtedly a lot riding on this. The trouble is, Ryong's mission is highly delicate, very dangerous and incredibly risky. He could get fired if he's caught, lose his medical license, and with everything watched by those in the MCC, until the script calls for them to look away, more on that shortly, it's definitely touch and go. Ryong is in a relationship with Go Yun, the chairman's daughter, and he knows he's not good enough for her until he proves himself. Ryong has never truly been happy in life, and unfortunately the show does very little to prove to us that he and Go Yun have a good thing going. We get half an episode early on for a flashback of these two hooking up, but it comes across more as a way of Go Yun getting back at her father, since he hates Ryong's guts from the off, and a ploy to reject her long-term clingy ex Kang-soo, rather than them falling head over heels in love for one another. Speaking of which, Kang-soo is also on board this space shuttle, and he's been given the same mission as Ryong. He wants to gain favour with the chairman in order to win Go Yun over and show that he's more than capable of looking after the CEO of MZ Group. There's certainly the foundations here for an interesting drama to play out, and this is helped along by another subplot involving mission controller Kang Tae-hui and sleazy Park Dong-ah, Eve's boyfriend. As we soon learn, these two are actually having an affair together. The first half of the drama takes place on board the International Space Station, and while the effects are pretty good, the confined setting also lends itself to needing to get the science right. There are massive liberties taken here, especially with some of the spacewalks and inconsistencies with zero gravity. However, more pressing an issue than this is a blatant use of dramatic spikes just to ratchet up the tension for the sake of it. I won't go into all of them here, but one of the more egregious examples comes from Eve holding a gun up to Ryong on the station and then hugging him 10 minutes later after saving a mouse by performing open heart surgery. We also get another instance here where Ryong saves Eve by heading out on a spacewalk, but the entire scene is framed as very dramatic in one episode, and then an episode later it's reframed in a more comedic setting, but we'll get to the tone shortly. The show is even more bizarrely put together though, because As I just said, this isn't an outright serious drama. The series tries to inject comedy into this one, but it's almost as if they fed the script into an AI to come up with comedic scenarios. Did anybody else laugh at the fruit fly sex scene that prevents a space shuttle from connecting to the space station? No? How about Earth mums setting fire to their kitchen and having no idea how to put it out, despite, running a successful restaurant? The problems run a lot deeper than simple inconsistencies or tonal blunders though, as the show is incredibly unbalanced with the story it's trying to tell. The first half, as I mentioned, takes place aboard the space station, and while Ryong and Kang-soo engage in this will they won't they fight to win over the chairman, it's hard to care when all the drama down on Earth is so boring and dragged out. Nobody at MZ Group is particularly likeable, and Go-yeon has as much depth as a puddle. You genuinely don't care if the chairman gets his wish because he just treats everybody like dirt, until he doesn't, depending on what the script calls for at that given time. Furthermore, we get some scenes involving Ryong's mums that feel like filler, alongside an ongoing gag about a lottery ticket that literally goes on and on and on for a grand total of 15 episodes. I'm not joking here, because what begins as a silly way to pass the time turns into a ridiculous drawn out subplot with no depth, no substance and no compelling resolution. That's before even mentioning the distinct lack of research or understanding around space laws, ethics, professional conduct, and the way the show breaks its own established world building if the script calls for it. The second half of the show appears as if it's about to give some satisfying payback for some of the actions our characters conduct. You see, up in space, Eve winds up sleeping with Ryong, and this is, unfortunately for them, broadcast to everybody back on Earth. The show makes a big point of showing reactions from the central characters, including Go-yeon, Kang-soo and Dong-ah, but with the exception of a few scenes and a bit of a punch-up, it's largely forgotten about several episodes later. Meanwhile, when the truth about Dong-ah's infidelity is revealed, he goes on some weird redemption arc, and the show just completely forgets about the real emotional toll this would have placed on Eve. In fact, at one point the show actually makes a joke about Taehui and Eve teasing Dong-ah about his cheating, as he visibly squirms while on board a shuttle. Meanwhile, we get the same thing for Go-yeon and Eve, who wind up drinking together, then stumble back to Ryong's and sleep in his bed together. That's it, that's the extent of their drama. Poor Go-yeon though is easily the biggest victim in the show. She's cast aside like trash by the writers, with zero arc and absolutely nothing to do from episode 9 onwards. There's a hint that she may get back together with her ex, or go the strong, independent female route, but the show never wants to pull the trigger on this either way, so it's just left up in the air by the time the final credits roll. Now, When the Stars Gossip also tackles themes around fertility, cheating and loyalty, but it does so with about as much finesse as a baby wielding a shotgun. The entire show makes a mockery of these topics, and as the show continues, it just gets worse and worse. Toward the end of the series, Eve winds up pregnant, which was perhaps obvious given the foreshadowed hints towards the opening parts of the show. I mentioned earlier about the MCC watching everything going on, and there's a lot of emphasis placed on this as part of the main storyline. Ryong gets in trouble at one point because of something he's done, and it's caught on camera, escalating into a full-blown incident, both on Earth and up at the station. However, late on, Eve uses an ultrasound machine on herself after somehow passing all the health tests that the MCC have. Nobody down on Earth picks up what she's doing because reasons, and I may add she's actually pregnant at this point, and you can see her just floating around in 0G in full view, clearly for everyone back at the MCC. There's also another subplot here involving Ryong's phone, which has a draft note written up of what he's been doing in space. However, we see the phone switch off due to a lack of battery, and we're led to believe that's the end of things. Only, wouldn't you know it, the rescue crew grabbed the phone later on, and it's turned on with the draft message up, and with a full battery, apparently.
Yes, science!
Causing issues for Ryong's future. I mean, anybody that knows anything about technology will question this, and the show never seems bothered by silly things like realism or drama, despite, marketing itself as a realistic space drama. And given the fact that they put so much emphasis on those cameras, why not just have the cameras zoom into the draft message on the phone as it flies through 0G? But all of this is trumped perhaps by the ending. My god, the ending. The series never manages to give a compelling resolution to anything, and then it just ends. It's clear the writers painted themselves into a corner and weren't quite sure how to handle this, so they opted for a bit of a montage and a jump in time, all whilst leaving huge questions unanswered, subplots unexplored, and a bad taste just left in everybody's mouths. Suffice to say, watching this, you'll be shocked at how badly this has been put together. Conflicts are thrown in for the sake of spicing things up with zero ramifications for anybody's actions. The MCC is just a complete joke by the time the show ends, saying nothing for a hilariously weird outburst from the flight director in Houston who flies off the handle. At this point, I'm not sure whether we're supposed to laugh or cry, or both. Meanwhile, the supporting characters have absolutely nothing to do once we head back to Earth in episode 9, and the main story lacks anything in the way of substance or watchable elements. In fact, it's hard to pick out any part of this that's actually compelling, and no amount of good acting can save this train wreck. On a final, slightly humorous note, this Korean drama is bizarrely obsessed with feet. Look, I'm not about to kink shame, don't worry, but it does kind of feel like a bit of the writer's fetish here, because Ryong constantly hammers on about Eve's feet for the first few episodes. There are extreme close-up shots of her toes throughout the series, while the midway point also sees a scene depicting Donga and Taehui in bed, with the camera panning up from the bottom, showing their feet. Then we get Ryong's feet examined back on Earth, and toward the end of the show we learn that Eve constantly kissed the feet of her baby when she gives birth. Is this just me? Did you guys notice this too? Of course, let us know your thoughts on this one in the comments. But ultimately, When the Stars Gossip can only really be described as a complete and utter catastrophe. It's a poorly written, poorly paced mess from start to finish. The characters lack substance, the show breaks its own world building constantly, while anything resembling realism is just thrown out the window. All of this, of course, topped off by one of the worst endings you're likely to see in a Korean drama. While it's still early days and we have a long way to go until the end of the year, When the Stars Gossip is definitely in the running for the worst TV show of 2025. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.